Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are pulling a stack of research articles and biochemical texts, synthesizing those critical insights and delivering them straight to you.
Today we're diving into the body's ultimate metabolic savings account, glycogen metabolism.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at the major storage carbohydrate in animals,
Right, it's structurally a bit like starch in plants.
but it's so much more dynamic.
Mm.
Glycogen is this critical energy buffer. It's essential because it lets us store glucose and then deploy it instantly when blood sugar drops.
Or when a muscle needs a burst of power.
Exactly.
And it's really more than just a storage molecule, it's a metabolic decision maker.
The decision maker, how so?
Well, this deep dive is all about the elegance of that system. You've got two completely separate pathways.
One for building it up, glycogenesis.
And another for breaking it down, glycogenolysis. And
Okay.
our mission here is to understand not just the steps, but the really sophisticated integrated regulatory switch that controls them.
The switch that's driven by hormones and our energy needs,
Precisely. That regulation is where health and disease really diverge.
and the distribution of this fuel in the body. That tells you a lot about its function right away.
It really does.
The liver, for example, has a high concentration of it, something like 5% of its weight.
Which is a lot. But the thing is, you have so much more muscle mass.
Right, something like 35 kilograms of muscle versus maybe 1.8 for a liver.
So when you do the math, about 3/4 of all the glycogen in your body is actually stored in your muscles.
Which points to that crucial functional separation.
It does. Think of it this way. Muscle glycogen is your personal fuel supply. It's local.
So it provides glucose 1-phosphate just for glycolysis right there, inside that specific muscle cell.
It's selfish fuel. It only powers local activity.
And the liver then is the central distribution bank.
That's the perfect analogy. Liver glycogen is the central reserve, and its whole job is to maintain blood glucose concentration for the entire system.
Especially when you're fasting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, after a meal, the liver might have a huge reserve, but fast for 12 to 18 hours.
And it's almost totally gone.
It's depleted.
This leads us to a really critical difference in their machinery. The muscle cannot act as that central bank.
It can.
It's missing a key enzyme, right? Glucose 6-phosphatase.
That is the absolute key. Without that enzyme, the muscle is stuck with glucose 6-phosphate.
It can't clip off that phosphate group to release free glucose into the blood.
It's trapped.
Yeah.
The pyruvate that's formed in muscle glycolysis, it has to be converted to alanine, exported.
And then the liver uses that alanine for gluconeogenesis.
Right, the glucose-alanine cycle. It's a sort of indirect way for muscle to support blood sugar, but it can't do it directly.
Now, structurally, glycogen is famous for being highly
No.
branched. And this isn't just a random detail.
No, it's a performance feature. It's all about speed.
How so?
Well, the branching creates a massive number of terminal ends, and that's where the breakdown enzymes start their work.
Ah, so more ends means more places to start cutting at the same time.
Exactly. If it were just one long straight chain, you'd only have two ends to work from. With hundreds of branches, you can get rapid, simultaneous breakdown.
Which is what you need for a sudden muscle contraction.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating because endurance athletes kind of hack this system.
You mean with carbohydrate load, yeah?
Yeah, they exercise to exhaustion, then eat a high-carb meal. The body synthesizes glycogen with fewer branch points.
For a slower, more sustained release of fuel.
Perfectly tailored for endurance. It's a brilliant metabolic hack.
Okay, let's shift to building the reserve. This is glycogenesis. And it's not just the reverse of breakdown.
Not at all. It's a completely different pathway.
So where does it start?
Well, the first couple of steps are familiar. Glucose gets phosphorylated to G6P, then isomerized to G1P. But the third step, activation, that's where the energy management really comes in.
We can't just stick glucose molecules together.
No, you have to activate them, turn them into a high-energy donor.
How does that work?
Glucose 1-phosphate reacts with UTP, that's uridine triphosphate, to form uridine diphosphate glucose, or UDPGlc.
Okay, the active form.
And this reaction releases pyrophosphate, PPI. The key is that the cell immediately hydrolyzes that PPI into two separate phosphates.
And that hydrolysis releases a ton of energy.
A ton. It's highly exergonic, and that's the thermodynamic pull that makes the entire synthesis process move forward. It's the cell paying the energy cost up front.
So before you can start building the main chains, you need some kind of foundation, right?
You do. You can't start a chain from nothing. That's where a protein called glycogenin comes in.
The primer.
It's the primer. This small protein actually attaches the first glucose to itself on a specific tyrosine residue.
And then it adds a few more.
It adds about 7 more glucose units.
Yeah.
And then, and only then, can the main enzyme take over. And what's amazing is that glycogenin stays right there at the very core of the finished glycogen granule.
So once the primer is set, the main builder, glycogen synthase, comes in.
Correct. It takes over, adding glucose units from that activated UDPGlc, forming all the alpha-1,4 bonds.
And then you need the branching.
Right. When a chain gets to be about 11 residues long, the branching enzyme snips off a segment of at least 6 glucoses.
And moves it over to create an alpha-1,6 linkage.
Creating a new branch, and that's how you get that tree-like structure, maximizing all those ends for quick access later.
So that's construction. Now for demolition glycogenolysis, a totally different set of tools.
A different set. And the enzyme that controls the speed of the whole process is glycogen phosphorylase.
Okay, what does it do?
It catalyzes phosphorylases. So it uses an inorganic phosphate to cleave the 1,4 linkages, and the product it releases is glucose-1-phosphate.
Which is really efficient.
Very efficient. The glucose is already phosphorylated, ready for glycolysis. It saves the cell an ATP.
But that enzyme can't handle the branches. It hits a wall.
It does. It stops exactly 4 residues away from a branch point. That's when the debranching enzyme has to step in.
And that's a 2-in-1 tool, isn't it?
It is. A single protein with 2 jobs. First, its transferase activity moves a little 3-glucose unit from the branch to the end of another chain.
Clearing the way.
Right. And then its second site, the 1,6-glycosidase, just hydrolyzes that single remaining alpha-1,6 bond, liberating 1 molecule of free glucose.
So after all that, most of the product is G1P, which becomes G6P. And we're back to that key liver-muscle distinction.
We are. The liver uses its special enzyme, G6Pase, to release free glucose into the blood. Muscle can't do that. Its G6P is immediately used for its own energy needs.
And we should probably mention there's another sort of alternative pathway for breakdown.
Yes, inside the lysosomes. It's mediated by an enzyme called acid maltase.
And that's more for cellular housekeeping.
It's for housekeeping and recycling. It's not a primary energy pathway in adults, but as we'll see, if you lose that enzyme, the results are devastating.
All right, so we have assembly and we have demolition. Now the big question, the regulation. How does the body make sure it's not doing both at the same time? They have to be reciprocally controlled.
And this is where the system is just beautiful. It all comes down to covalent modification, specifically phosphorylation.
Adding a phosphate group.
Yes. And the core principle is really simple to remember.
Okay.
Phosphorylation turns on the breakdown enzyme, phosphorylase, but it turns off the storage enzyme, glycogen synthase.
So phosphorylation is the signal for burn fuel now.
It is. And this whole decision is mediated by the CAMP cascade, which is a powerful biological amplifier.
It starts with a hormone.
Right. A hormone like epinephrine or glucagon binds to its receptor. That activates an enzyme, adenyl cyclase, which starts making CAMP.
The second messenger.
Exactly. And CAMP's job is to activate another enzyme, the CAMP-dependent protein kinase, or PKA.
And PK is the one that does the phosphorylating.
It starts the phosphorylation chain. It phosphorylates and activates another kinase called phosphorylase kinase.
Okay.
That kinase then phosphorylates and activates the main breakdown enzyme, glycogen phosphorylase.
And at the same time.
At the exact same time, that same PKA also phosphorylates glycogen synthase, which shuts it down.
Hitting the brakes on storage while stepping on the gas for breakdown.
A perfect reciprocal switch.
I think the tissue-specific response here is so elegant. Glucagon, the low blood sugar hormone, only acts on the liver.
Right. The muscle is totally insensitive to it.
Muscle only listens to epinephrine or norepinephrine, the fight-or-flight signals.
It makes perfect biological sense. Glucagon's message is, hey, liver, the whole body is low on sugar, help out. Epinephrine's message is, danger, muscle, you need fuel to run right now.
But muscle has an even faster way to get going, doesn't it? It's linked to calcium.
Yes. That instantaneous decision to contract a muscle, that signal also triggers fuel release.
How?
When a muscle contracts, calcium floods the cell. And it turns out that one of the subunits of phosphorylase kinase is actually calmodulin, a calcium sensor.
So when calcium binds to it.
The kinase gets activated immediately, even before the hormones and PKA have had time to act. The signal for contraction is the signal for fuel release.
That is just incredible real-time feedback. Okay, so that's the on switch. How do we turn it off and start storing fuel again?
That's the job of the counter-regulatory enzyme, protein phosphatase 1 or PP1.
The dephosphorylation squad.
Exactly. It goes around and clips off all those phosphate groups that pKa put on, shutting down phosphorylase and the whole breakdown pathway.
And this is where insulin comes in, the fed state hormone.
Absolutely. Insulin's job is to, say, store fuel. It increases glucose uptake, which raises G6P levels, and high G6P helps activate PP1 to dephosphorylate and reactivate glycogen synthase.
And in the liver, insulin also gets rid of the CAMP signal itself.
It does, by activating an enzyme that degrades it. So insulin attacks the burn signal from multiple angles, ensuring the store signal wins.
That tight control is so critical, and we see just how critical when we look at the glycogen storage diseases, the GSDs.
These are inherited disorders where that control breaks down, and they really connect the biochemistry to devastating human consequences.
Let's maybe touch on a few key examples. What about type P, von Gierke disease?
That's a deficiency in glucose-6-phosphatase.
So the liver can make glycogen, it can break it down to G6P, but the exit door is locked.
Exactly. The liver and kidneys fill up with glycogen, but the body can't get the glucose out. The main result is severe fasting hypoglycemia.
And all that trapped G6P has to go somewhere.
Right. It gets shunted into glycolysis, leading to high levels of lactic acid and ketones.
Okay, what about a muscle-specific one, like type V McArdle syndrome?
That's a deficiency in muscle phosphorylase. The muscle's own ATM is broken.
They can't access their local fuel.
Correct. So they have very poor exercise tolerance and cramping. And paradoxically, their muscles are packed with glycogen they can't use.
And a key clinical sign is that their blood lactate doesn't go up after exercise.
Because they can't produce the pyruvate to make it, it's a classic failure of local fuel mobilization.
And finally, let's go back to that lysosomal pathway we mentioned. Type 2 Pompe disease.
That's a deficiency in the lysosomal enzyme, acid maltase. Here, the problem isn't energy, it's waste disposal. Glycogen just builds up and up inside the lysosomes.
And in the severe juvenile form, that's fatal.
It is. It leads to profound muscle weakness and heart failure, which just highlights that even these secondary pathways are absolutely essential.
So let's try to recap. What does this all mean? Glycogen is the body's energy buffer. In muscle, it's for local, immediate fuel.
And in the liver, it's the systemic reserve to control blood sugar for the whole body.
The pathways for building and breaking it down are completely separate.
And they are beautifully reciprocally regulated by the opposing actions of phosphorylation, which is driven by the CAMP cascade, and dephosphorylation, which is driven by insulin and PP1.
Breakdown versus storage.
Exactly. And to leave you with one final thought, just consider the sheer power of that CAMP cascade. It's an amplification system.
Meaning a small signal gets a huge response.
A huge response. One single molecule of epinephrine can lead to the release of thousands, even millions, of glucose molecules in seconds. Every single step, adenylyl cyclase, pKa, phosphorylase kinase, magnifies the signal.
So that amplification is what allows for that instantaneous massive metabolic shift we need for survival.
Whether that's running from a threat or just the simple act of waking up in the morning, it's all about speed and scale.
It's incredible stuff. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into glycogen. We look forward to synthesizing the next stack of knowledge for you soon.